Steve at Driving School WA here. In this short video, I'm going to share some secrets on how to keep the composure in a driving assessment. We've seen literally many hundreds of people who were nervous, who could not handle the thought of, going with the assessor in the car and being judged. We had many hundreds, but all of those who implemented sooner or later these techniques did manage to pass their driving assessment. And we strongly recommend that you just analyze what it is that's taking place, okay? So yes, it's a driving test. There's a person who's appointed by the Department of Transport who will look over your shoulder and, who will have to make sure that you drive to the standard. They will not fail you on the spot for most minor errors if they don't repeat too often, only if they have to intervene. If a candidate is reasonably well prepared and if it's nerves that they need to overcome, often we would ask them to write down in block letters on the blank piece of paper what are the likely outcomes. We ask them to write down a few things, such as what are the most likely scenarios. You can fail, you can pass. So the worst case scenario would be that a person fails, so they don't basically get to do the test, they just do something in the car park that basically discontinues the driving assessment on the spot, or similar, so just going through the stop sign, or even speeding, or not spotting a pedestrian that's coming right across and the assessor needs to intervene. If that happens in 2 to 3 minutes, or even less sometimes. Some people out of nervousness don't even make it out of the car park. We can only imagine how it feels. Okay, so the second case scenario would be that you pass. And that you pass with flying colours, like a clean sheet. There's nothing at all. If a person's relatively well prepared to do their driving assessment, we would ask them, hey, can you tell us what's a realistic expectation for your driving test? Can you tell us what you truly believe? Most of them would say to pass with a few minor errors. So if you look at all of those bullet points that you wrote on a piece of paper, so it says to fail and to fail in a miserable manner. The second one is to pass with a clean sheet, flying colours, there's nothing whatsoever. And the third one, which is the most likely case scenario with 99% of people who pass, is to pass with a few minor errors here and there. So if you look at that and if you analyse everything and if you ask yourself, what is so much in these three scenarios that worries me so much? And why am I losing control over it, So let's put it in the perspective for you. In any scenario, like in any case, you're still going to go back home and you're still going to do whatever you want to do. You can ring your friends, you can, have your lunch or dinner, you can hug your dog, whatever you want to do, really. So nothing else changes other than result that will be heavily impacted on, how you're feeling. Fully understanding these aspects will definitely 100%, no matter how nervous and what sort of character you are going to perform better. So you're still going to go back home, you're still going to do whatever you do, and you're going to basically either have your license in your pocket or you're going to have to repeat it. So what else does it involve? If you don't pass, so yes, it's going to cost you a little bit more. You've got to pay for the entitlement and you've got to potentially pay for some more lessons and to hire a vehicle for the driving assessment. But still, it doesn't justify your facial muscles twitching and not breathing properly. We ask all of our clients who are about to go for the driving assessment just to make sure that they breathe at the normal tempo, If you breathe too heavy, your brain doesn't get enough oxygen and your rational thinking might be impaired. Just be conscious of your breathing, right? So just breathe normally. Don't breathe too heavy or too shallow, because biologically, if your brain doesn't get enough oxygen, you're not going to be able to process your thoughts. So think about it. It's really not that scary. Sometimes, jokingly, we would even say, it's not a dentist. You're not going to your dentist. So it's really simple. You go for a drive. If you feel that you're reasonably well prepared, in order to retrieve those tricks that you've got up your sleeve, you will need to be composed. There's no substitute for it. Well, guess what? If you don't manage to keep your composure throughout the driving assessment, you're going to have to do it the next time. If you don't do it the next time, you're going to have to do it the next time. So think of it as a Sunday morning drive, and there's a person that's sitting next to you who wants to establish you can drive safely. That's all it is. That's all it's required. You need to understand that how you act will potentially give the assessor a reason to, intervene or, do something that's undesirable in a driving assessment. Your execution on the day will closely depend on how you feel. You've got to work on your mindset. Everyone needs to understand the seriousness of getting a driver's license, because it's a serious matter. Just getting your license is not necessarily going to make you a safe driver. You still need to be aware of all of these things that we teach you. And the assessor on the day of your PDA will have to have that impression. You will have to show that you can drive safely. That is number one. Even if the errors of, some major nature are caused by your nervousness, that's still not going to be justifiable to say, look, I was nervous, so I didn't see the car. So you just can't do that. You've got to understand that the nervousness is depletion of being able to think on your feet. Constructive energy gets impaired. To act accordingly to any situation that we can't predict is a skill that requires a normal function of your brain. But if you are too nervous, your rational thinking will be one of the things that's not going to function properly. So you've got to understand that. We understand that it's easier for us to say this, but it is best to try and implement it. Parking a little bit wide from the curb, not indicating when you're pulling up and, reversing slightly wide. So it would be sort of considered as a minor error in the test. A number of people tend to catastrophize those things, and as a result, they would simply not be able to continue, because they would be too stressed out and they'd be thinking too much about what happened just then. They'd be thinking about how they're going to continue if that's already happened. They'd be thinking about what are they tapping in their tablet. Look, put it this way, the assessors have to enter something. So they've got to enter something. Whether you do it right or wrong, they will have to tap their tablet. So you've got to understand that. What do we do if something happens and we know it's wrong? What's the best thing to do? If you briefly comment on what you've just noticed, oh look, I've just pulled out a little bit wide, or oh, I've noticed there's a bus stop too close, hey, let me just move a little bit forward, I don't know what I was thinking. So as brief as possible and correct it. Sooner you recover, the better, and you potentially won't even be marked down. Whereas those who catastrophize, they would not be thinking when they get out of that spot. They'd be thinking about what happened just then and potentially missing the sign that said roadworks. We've had situations where a person misses a pedestrian that's coming right into their path, not noticing it because they were thinking about what happened about 2 minutes ago, which would not have failed them in the first place. So it's really down to you making a decision how you are going to act accordingly. So it's about presentation. So you've got to make a safe driving presentation. How are you going to act? How your presentation will be? It's as simple as that. Most assessors in Perth are very reasonable professionals who will make a decision based on what you do. We haven't had many cases in the last 2 decades where an assessor made a decision that was not right. So you've got to understand their point of view, okay? So if you can't satisfy the criteria on the day for whatever reason, whether it's the, nervousness and the, being tired or, unprepared, you've got to understand that they've got to look at the criteria. Okay, so in all of the 5 sections in the driving assessment exercises, and 3 of the sections are driving sections, there are 7 criteria points, which are looking, signalling, flow, movement, path, responsiveness, and vehicle management. Looking, signalling, flow, movement, path, responsiveness, and vehicle management. Responsiveness is usually left out because only if something out of ordinary happens, such as a crisis where a kid chases a ball and jumps right in front of your car, you would have to be able to act as good as an experienced driver. But other six, criteria points are marked accordingly. Try and be conscious of things that we've just mentioned here. So you've got to be able to execute all the tasks on a day to the standard. And safety is what matters. It's not so much whether you've done a few minor errors, because they understand that you are not experienced unless you are upgrading to a C class or, transferring your overseas license. But if you're a learner driver who's never held a license before, they do perfectly understand that you are not experienced and that you will gain experience at some point. They don't judge you on your experience. We can't really have situations on demand. They will take you randomly through the streets. All of these things happen randomly. We can't really tell how many cars are there going to be around the corner, whether there's going to be a cyclist on your left-hand side, if there's a pedestrian coming through, what's going to happen behind, around every bend. If you are unsure, ask the assessor what they wanted you to do. But obviously, you've got to watch the flow. Sometimes people get concerned about what they need to do, and they would slow down significantly. For an instance, if it's a 60 zone, and if a person is unsure what to do, if they reduce their speed significantly, say to 30 or 40 kilometres an hour, and continue driving at that speed as a result of not knowing what they need to do, the assessor will severely mark them on the floor. Be aware of your surroundings. You've got to know what's within your immediate surrounding in order to act properly. So make sure that you check your mirrors properly, that you check your blind spots, anticipate intersections, particularly give way intersections, because that's where we don't stop if there's no vehicles. You're not going to be able to take proper actions if you don't anticipate intersections. So ensure that you have plenty of practice days leading to the test, and make sure that you're familiar with the process in the driving assessments. Otherwise, you're going to be in for a big surprise. There's no substitute for professional lessons, and everyone who thinks they can try and get away without doing any professional lessons, they're going to ask their friends, and they're going to see on the internet and try and watch videos. Yes, videos and research it's helpful, but it's not a substitute for professional driving lessons. This is something that we can share from our experience, and these particulars worked for many hundreds of people who felt that they would never pass their driving assessment. We urge you to try and do some changes to how you perceive the whole event. You have far better chances of passing. Just simply put, if you can drive perfectly for 2 minutes, just do it 2 minutes at a time and repeat it like 15, 16 times, and that's going to be the end of the test. Make sure that you don't get carried away before you turn the engine off when you come back to the car park of the licensing centre. A lot of times people get carried away and they would kind of think to themselves, "Woo, I've done it," and then the next moment they'd be potentially parking too close to a car and somebody opens the door, they don't see it, and the assessor would have to brake in, obviously to avoid a potentially dangerous situation. So you are the one who needs to carry it out from the beginning to the end without any intervention by the assessor. Having your composure will make this process a lot easier. It's inevitable that you are going to have better results if you can think rationally throughout your driving assessment. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.